Thank you for today. Hello and welcome. I'm Elvina from School of Life by My Places. Thank you for your time today, YB, and thank you for joining. All right, today the topic that we will be talking about is are the youth ready for more? Okay, but before
Yep.
that, on behalf of everyone here, we would like to thank you for your time, for having you over here for our podcast today, YB Syed Saddiq. All right, so let's kickstart. So we're just gonna talk like chit chat things like that.
Sure,
So
sure.
so how are you? Like
Uh,
how's your family doing?
Everything
Trust.
is good. I'm spending a lot more time in my constituency in Muar. My family is okay. I mean, we just had the passing of my grandfather, mom's side, so my mom's dad. So that's a little bit tough. But besides that, we are surviving.
All right. So sorry to hear about that.
It's okay. Thank you.
Sending my condolences to your family. All right. Okay. So we are talking about youth today. So the topic would be like people generally think that as a youth, they actually have insufficient knowledge on and experience about to be leaders or even be a voters. Like, what do you think about that? Like, what's your opinion? What's your thoughts on that?
I humbly disagree. I understand where the skepticism comes from. People see young people as inexperienced, they lack knowledge. Some people call them complacent, lazy. However, I think it's very important to look at comparisons. For an example, when I lobbied for the constitutional amendment to reduce voting age from 21 to 18, while some may say, oh, young people, they love to become mat rempit, they're lazy. But again, I think that's a wrong and unfair generalization on young people. What if I make the also unfair generalization about those who are 70 years and above? I mean, they're already suffering from amnesia, they're no longer active, they are weak, they can't even walk properly. Is that a fair generalization? Of course not. But in a way, we still allow voting for everyone, right? And when you are 18 years old, you can already get a driver's license, you can join the military, you can sign a meaningful contract, you're already treated as an adult in a court of law. So I think it's quite ironic that we allow young people to do all of that, but when it comes to exercising their right over their own future, suddenly we consider them to be too young. I think that's it's not just about voting, right? It's also about including them into important decision-making process. If you look at the top 100 companies in the world, Forbes 100 largest companies, we see a lot more young people included in respective boards. And the reason why companies are doing so, the largest corporations, is because they know that young people bring a unique angle to the table, whether they are tech
Okay.
experts,
Call
whether
you.
they are disruptors, and those who don't include young people will often get disrupted by companies set up by young people, like Facebook, Amazon, when Jeff Bezos first started, and even Microsoft, when it was first started. So in a way, young people are meant to be the generation of disruptors, and if we don't include them at the decision-making table, they will find a way to force themselves there. So I think it's better to find a harmonious solution which includes and respects them as adults and as decision makers.
Okay, yes, I do understand like where is your point coming from and standing there for the youth. But because sometimes we do hear about people saying, because they are given too much privilege for them, that they lost track on their core values and sometimes because they're being too pampered, like, whatever things that they want now, it's like given with a snap, that's directly how they get it. So what are some of the important core values, attributes that the youth should have to their, given all the priorities and all the rights and all the benefits and privilege for technology. So what are the back to the core values? Like what is the important one?
I think it's categorically wrong to mislabel young people as pampered. I mean, if you look at the younger generation of today, not only are they expected to take up 2 or 3 jobs to sustain living, it's much, much harder for them to own a house in comparison to their parents' generation. If you ask your parents, by their mid-30s, they will already own a house, but among young people in their mid-30s, they can barely pay their rental. Not just that. I mean, if you look at the statistics department, they have clearly showed that for the past 20 years, when we take in the rate of inflation, the income among young graduates has been at a steady decline. I mean, while all of this is happening, the older generation, especially those who control banks, are getting richer and richer. We see reports saying that 600,000 families, middle-class families, working families, now being pushed down below poverty line, or now within the B40 group. But at the same time, we see banks making astronomical profits. Bank CEOs who are all getting huge salary increments and also bonuses. So where are young people in all of this? I mean, we are on the worst end. We are expected to do 2 or 3 jobs in a month. We cannot own properties because it's much, much harder. Our income is at a steady decline. So I think in reality, young people are very resilient and persevere through the toughest times. I think that signals the values of young people, that we are a generation of disruptors. We dare to think out of the box. We think critically. We are ridiculously hardworking, and we can persevere whatever challenges come our way. So I think it is important for me to correct the misperception out there that young people are indeed a pampered group. It is the exact opposite.
All right. Thank you for speaking on behalf of, some of them that is really working hard, especially, on the corporate ladders and whatsoever job that is given. Yes. Yeah, I do have friends which have the same struggle as well, when they want to buy a certain houses, certain loans, that they need to go through. Yep. And I do see that you have passion for both politics and business as well. So actually, how do you juggle between it? Because when I see from your social media, you are like, kejap you're like here and then kejap you're there. Basically, you're like everywhere. So how do you juggle it? Because we
Yeah.
all have 24 hours, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's about effective time management. Um, it effectively means that I have to slash back my luxury time, whether it's about watching movies or Netflix, or whether it's my more private dating life. You have to slash that back and prioritize. So to me, Muar Parliament comes first, then comes national politics, and also my business, which is Cooks, the cloud kitchen, which I just set up with 4 other young aspiring Malaysians. So I believe it can be done. It's just that we have to work ridiculously harder. I believe um, in what Elon Musk said, right? I mean, being someone young and at the age of disruption, if your competitors work for 8 hours a day, you must work 16 hours a day. And while I know some may view this as a toxic working habit, but for me, I don't see it as work. I see it something which I genuinely believe in. I love doing. I don't mind doing it during my free time, and I will dedicate my weekends working because I love it. And I don't view it as a chore. So I can, because I believe in it, and I hope that there will be a lot more Malaysians out there who will have the flexibility of pursuing what they believe in. It becomes tough when, for an example, you graduate from an engineering school, but in the end you are forced into a job sector which you have no passion or even liking it, because of the mismatch of the job sector. Then it becomes a genuine problem. But for me, I love the politics of service. I love disrupting different industries and businesses, and I believe that Cooks, my cloud kitchen, will disrupt the F&B sector. And I want to continue down that line. I want to disrupt politics. I want to disrupt businesses. I want to truly embody the young generation, where we are the generation of disruptors.
That's why people were saying, like, if you find a job that you love, you don't feel like you're working any time of the day because that's your passion, that's where you're going on. But then I do see that your Mama Kitchen, the one is from your mom, is it? Right?
Yes,
That
yes.
is another new business that is coming up.
That's
Yeah.
that's run by my mum, and that's by her. Actually, I'm not. I don't even have any shares in that. My mum just retired as a teacher late last year. She's been a civil servant for more than 40 years, dedicating her life to teaching children across Malaysia. And when she retired, quite tragically, her cancer relapsed. She won in the war against breast cancer in the 2012, 2013. But just as she got news of her retirement, it relapsed. And I was speaking to her doctors and some of my friends who are doctors. I mean, retirement can be good at the same time painful. The last thing she wants is to remain idle and not active. And my mom, like me, is a workaholic. I get that level of workaholism from my mom. I see her
Yeah.
working day in and day out, and she genuinely enjoys teaching, and I enjoy doing what I do. So after speaking to her, she said, she genuinely loves cooking, and throughout her life, she's a teacher and a part-time cook, because at home she cooks all the time. She cooks for the family, not just the small family, for big families. And I've never found anyone who's a better cook than my mom. And when I floated this idea to her, she said that there's a problem in terms of finding the right capital, because to start up a restaurant now, it's very, very tough. 100,000 ringgit cost of renovation. You need to hire about 5 staff. Cost of rental in high-end areas is about 10 to 15,000 ringgit a month. And that's where I suggested to my mom, why don't she take up a lot at my club kitchen? Instead of needing a capital, startup capital of 300,000 ringgit, now she only needs about 15 to 30,000 ringgit, which is less than 10% the cost of starting up a restaurant. And she did it. She started, I think, sometime last week, and now sales are going really, really well. Her cost is really low because she only needs to hire 2 people. Rental is ridiculously cheaper than owning a restaurant, and with data and tech integration, I think she's doing quite well. So I think she's happy. That's most important, if you ask me. Now she has something to look forward to, something to take care of, and the family is there to support her all the way. So it's really relieving to see someone like my mom, who just retired now, keeping herself active and busy, and at the same time genuinely love doing what she's doing, which is cooking.
What she loves as well, right? Yeah. So can see that. Okay, so do send our regards to your mom as well, to pray that she's always in good health, all right?
Thank you.
And,
Thank you very much.
And yes, so in another way, like, yes, you too inspired your mom. Like, you start up with the idea to give her suggestion, to keep her up her time, while she already retire. That's really good. So at the same time, she can masak lebih and you can makan as well at the same time, right?
Of course.
Right, moving on to the next one. It's why MUDA? There's a political party that you were starting with. So it's like why MUDA, and like how is your relationship with Tun M nowadays? Like, can you share it with us a little bit about it?
Sure. I mean, there's a long story as to why MUDA and how it first came to being. I'll try my best to cut it short. Okay. But I believe that Malaysians, and the majority of Malaysians, are exasperated, exhausted, tired of the existing political establishment and corporate elites, because it's almost as if the average Malaysian's issues, interests are not taken care of. It's always the same political and corporate elites cling on to power. And even though there's a change in government, they will continue to control and be in power. MUDA is meant to disrupt that. Right? We want to change the culture in Putrajaya. We want to decentralize power from the hands of the Prime Minister, restore state interest and autonomy, ensure that there's no winner take all, therefore restore allocations to all members of parliament, restore allocations to opposition states, ensure that the Prime Minister no longer has full control in appointing the head of the police, head of the anti-corruption agency, all respective heads, but we have to go through the parliament by returning power back to the people. We want to ensure that Malaysia truly embraces its multiracial Malaysian identity. Not to say that you need to dissociate yourself from being a Chinese, Malay, Indian, Iban, Kadazan, but the reality is diversity is what ties us all up together, and it is our strength that our lives are interconnected to one another, and policies must reflect that, changes must reflect that. I'm very sure if you ask a middle-class Chinese family whether we should give an education scholarship to a poor Malay family who deserves it, I'm very sure that the Chinese family will agree. Vice versa, you ask a middle-class Malay family whether there's a need to help the poor Chinese family out, that middle-class Malay family will agree. The problem comes is when, sons and daughters of rich parents are the ones who get subsidies, are the ones who get scholarships. The problem is when government assistance worth multi-billion dollar ringgit worth of contracts keep on going to the same people without going through RFP or open tender. In the end, the rich will continue to become richer and the poor gets poorer. The problem is when the rich can keep on hedging their bets by funding the government and opposition parties so that whoever is in power will always work for them. And I think this is where we need to have a political funding act to reform democracy once and for all, transparency in funding to ensure that we help small businesses first and create the taxation system which no longer only taxes the working class, but ones which is a lot more fair, just, and transparent. I say all of this because that's inherently MUDA. MUDA is meant to disrupt Malaysian politics. We want to be the party of change and reform. We want to embrace multiracialism. We don't want to continue the practices of the past where you can have changes in government 5 to 10 times, but still the same elite in Putrajaya, the same elite in the corporate sector who control Malaysia. It's time for us to disrupt it and to change it. I believe that's what MUDA stands for. It's not a party meant only for young people, but it's meant for the idealists, the change makers, those who are willing to work the long ground to bring change in Malaysia. Change is never easy, it's never short, but it is worth it, and that's a battle which MUDA will pursue. Briefly, I mean, you mentioned about my relationship with Tun Mahathir. It's still very respectful. I respect him as a statesman, and I still do stay regularly in touch with him. He has his ideas, I have mine, and we often share it together. Where we can work together, we will work together. I, like him, feel very strongly in combating corruption. I just believe that Malaysia is best served through a multiracial agenda while upholding the constitution. And I know he loves the Malaysia constitution, and I will uphold that as well. So where we can work together, we will work together. He's a guy with amazing work ethics who work in and out, and I had the privilege of serving him in cabinet and even when I was in opposition. So I learned a lot, and I will continue to ensure that Malaysia grows and that Malaysia's future is in safe hands. Something which I know he feels very strongly about.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much for all the insight on what MUDA is about, so that we, our listeners can have a clearer idea on, it's not just about youth, but it's basically a party for everyone to have the same understanding and the same interest as well for the future. But since we are on the MUDA, so who are the ones in the MUDA, like in the party? Probably can name a few so people will, like the listeners will know more about it.
Sure. Interesting part about MUDA, and this is why I feel like I'm at home, is because these are like-minded Malaysians, young and old together, with ideas of disruption. And these are people that have proven themselves in different industries. I think you yourself know Dr. Eric, and then how he founded My Printers to become a very successful youth movement. He's a very successful businessman as well. We have many civil society leaders like Ami Hadi, who's in the front lines of almost every single protest, including Bersih and Bantah GST, and also who work with Swaram. We have the founder of Sekolah Caukit, Cikgu Ayu, who has provided quality education for stateless children across Malaysia. We have led many different NGOs serving the underprivileged communities in Malaysia, and well known in that field. We have many successful young corporates who have been awarded Forbes 30 under 30. People like Nadir, who founded the Lori, a very successful startup who's connecting the logistics sector with the average Malaysian. You have people like Saudara Razi Tajuddin, the founder of High Home, who's also one of the youngest Malaysians, if not the youngest Malaysian, appointed on the National Economic Action Council, the top economic decision-making body in Malaysia, which sits together with the Prime Minister, with the Minister of Finance, with the most successful corporate elites. I mean, it shows that we have a very diverse range of leaders: Malay, Chinese, Indians from Sabah, Sarawak, Iban, Kadazan, young and old, disruptors, and also those who have served civil societies. And I really do feel at home when I work with them, because these are the very people who I know who have successfully proven themselves in their own respective fields, but now wanting to change Malaysia through politics. And that's why I believe MUDA is home.
Okay, all right. Oh yes, and by the way, Dr. Lawrence sent his regards to you. Yeah. Thank you.
Is he a part of this conversation now, Dr. Lawrence?
No, he's not. But previously
really?
he said, yeah.
Please do send my warmest regards to him.
Yes, I will. Okay.
But no, he's still running my printers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, back to the MUDA. We were talking about people with the same passion and the same interest. Like, do you think that your composition in MUDA is well balanced?
So we will ensure, and we'll try our best to ensure, that MUDA embodies the true spirit of multiracialism, gender equity. And that's why if you look in MUDA, if you look at, don't just look at parliament heads or also respective state chiefs, look at the top leadership. We have people like Dr. Tanusha, Vice President. We have people like Cik Wayu, Vice President, both disruptors in your own fields. We have representation of multiracialism within the leadership, I think a lot more than other parties as well. So we want that to be the true nature of MUDA, that we don't just preach about diversity, but diversity comes in leadership from the top to the bottom, and that we will practice what we preach.
Yep, that's really important because being leaders, that's what the youth will look up to. So as a role model as well on like what movement they are doing. So that's why they will somehow be inspired to be at the top as well. Yep. So since we're talking about MUDAs, right? So what are some of the focuses that MUDA may have not covered, and oh yes, and a certain thing according to certain groups, you seem to be more on publicity compared to action or impact. Like, what would you like to comment about that?
Sure. While publicity is important, I think actual change is even more important. That's why in my short stint as a minister, in less than a year, I was able to amend the constitution 3 times, not once, despite Malaysia or Pakatan Harapan not having 2/3 majority. I worked the ground, met up with the leader of opposition, met up with all MPs, regardless whether in government, opposition, or even though they are in different parties than mine, to strike a middle ground. And that diplomacy and bipartisanship created history for Malaysia through 3 constitutional amendments in less than 1 year, done by a government without 2/3 support for the very first time in Malaysia's history. I think MUDA embodies that as well, right? That's where you are seeing, even though we don't have the backing of the billionaires, we don't have a lot of money and finances, and a lot of us work from home and fund ourselves. But you look in the smallest of ways, we have disrupted political funding through a lot of crowdfunding initiatives. In less than 12 hours, we're able to fundraise 50,000 ringgit for our Bantuan Mahasiswa. Now across Malaysia, we have run program Mari Bantu or Muda Bantu, which provides food aid, food baskets, also many specific assistance towards underprivileged communities in Malaysia. And it's not just about the politics of service. Above and beyond that, we talk about policies, and that's where, for example, we've released our list of demands in terms of government assistance to ensure that small traders can be taken care of, SMEs can be taken care of. The need for an extended automatic moratorium to help businesses thrive and survive, and for job creation to be sustained. These are all policy suggestions which we have made, concrete policy suggestions we've backed up by science and data to drive Malaysia forward. Because MUDA is not just a multiracial party, a moderate party, but it's a policy-driven party, a policy-based party which is based on science and data. I want to ensure that that's the basis of public policy making in Malaysia. So I think there's a lot more room where we can improve and where we should improve. I think we should be a lot more proactive in fighting for climate change and climate issues. We also need to ensure that we create a strong movement and momentum to overhaul and restructure our economy and to overhaul Putrajaya, so that we get genuine, meaningful change, so that the average Malaysian, the working class Malaysian, will be taken care of, and that should be the priority of MUDA.
Right. So from here, I can roughly understand, more about what MUDA Party is doing, and hear about what are the initiatives and what are the people that is interested in there, and what is the thing that you're offering for all of us as a Malaysian as well. So what are some focuses that MUDA might not be covering? I can see that you are doing in education and all this Mari Bantu for people. And what about things like for, let's say, environmental? Is there anything that is covered by your party or anything?
One of the 5 critical pillars of the formation of MUDA is on environmental reforms and climate change. So it's one of the 5 critical pillars of MUDA. Have we done enough? No. We must do a lot better. It's not just about being reactionary, speaking up when there is an issue on climate change. But in reality, is to come up with a proper, comprehensive plan to ensure that we reduce our reliance on carbon heavy industries, to ensure that we incentivize more renewable energy in Malaysia, and making that one of the core sectors for Malaysia's development. So I think there's a lot more grounds on policy improvements which we can propose, and I believe our team is already looking to this. Our policy team is already looking to this. We will present our comprehensive plan on this matter. So there are definitely other areas. We are a party which haven't even gotten formal registration, but in less than, in less than 2 weeks, we got 30,000 members, and we had closed membership because ROS was was pissed off at us. But even then, we have grown enormously in respective parliaments, states, and across Malaysia, as reflected by different polls. Whether the polls done by Sinar Harian and Sinchu, which put us in the top 5 parties in Malaysia, despite us being unregistered. The polls done by O2 Research, which puts us solidly at 10 to 15% national popularity as a single party. So I think there's a lot more which we can do, but we should not be driven by polls only. We should be driven by issues and by the people. What may be unpopular now, but if it stands in the interest of the people, I think will helicopter us upwards. But we need to break whatever barriers and walls which are built between us and the people. So MUDA must always be seen as a party of the people, and that's MUDA.
Right. Like I say here, it's really fortunate for us Malaysians to have a youth leader like you, not just to cover it on helping people, but as well on the environmental and basically whatever that is that needs help, that needs a voice to voice out, like you're helping voices, people to actually speak up for their rights. So yes, on behalf of everyone, I really like to thank you for your steps, what have you been doing since day one, okay? And once again, before we read on the end, so back again to the question. So Malaysia youth really ready for more, despite all of the challenges that they're going through, all the up and downs, and that's from what you have shared just now, being perseverance on what they do. Like back to the original questions, like are they ready for more? Like more as in like, it's not just about education, it's not just about graduating, it's not just about working, like more in life.
150%. That they know that they not only can, but should be given more. Why I say that? It's not just a matter of populism, but as I shared, our generation has gone through things which none have. We are expected to work multiple different jobs. It's much harder for us to own assets like a home. Wage stagnation is a real issue, if not wage decline, when you factor in the cost of inflation. We suffer from climate change, and we will be the generation to suffer the most from it. And above and beyond that, and Malaysia's success is in our hands. That we're not just seen or should be seen as leaders of tomorrow. We are leaders of today, and we should have a seat at the decision-making table, whether it's in an NGO, whether it's in a corporate structure, whether it's in politics. We must have a seat, and when we do have that seat, we continue to bring the interests of our generation forward. So the reason why, despite all of this, I still feel ultimately optimistic of Malaysia's future is because when I see how my generation and how even those who are much, much younger than me are today. They are a lot more educated, they are critical thinkers, they dare to think unconventionally to resolve a conventional problem. So I believe that Malaysia's optimism lies in the younger generation, and I see great hope in Malaysia because of them.
Yes, for the younger generation now, they not just think out of the box, they are thinking out of the box, another layer of the box as well. Yes, definitely do agree with that. And okay, last two questions is, do you have any message for the frontliners here in Malaysia on how they've been working through the combat of the COVID? Like, do you have any message for them, for the frontliners?
I mean, Malaysia owes our lives to the frontliners. Frontliners are not just the medical practitioners. Frontliners also include the food delivery riders who brace through the COVID storm to provide food on top of our table. Frontliners are also the volunteers who go house to house to register the older generation to get their vaccines. These are all frontliners. And these are the people who, in the smallest to the biggest of ways, have saved tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of lives, which could potentially be lost to COVID, but because of them, we are still alive today. And it's not just about verbal appreciation. They deserve to get the kind of bonuses, they deserve to get the salary increase, they deserve to be treated with a dignified wage, not a slave wage. And I think this is where we must all come together to ensure that the frontliners get a dignified wage. Stop only talking about minimum wage, because if a minimum wage is a slave wage, then it doesn't serve the interests of these people. So let's work together to give policy appreciation to them, so that in the end, their good work will not go unrewarded.
Yeah, once again, thank you so much for, for speaking on behalf of them, so that their voice can be heard, especially during these tough times. Okay, one last question, like, what is your ambition and dream for Malaysia in the next 50 years?
50?
Yes.
50 years. I dream for a Malaysia which is truly united among different races, different religions and ethnicities, one which is truly moderate in terms of its practices, and prosperous. But prosperity is not merely about GDP per se, but it's looking at the average income of the average Malaysian, dealing and waging wars against poverty, not just absolute poverty, but relative poverty. A Malaysia in which our education standards will be significantly better than our neighboring competitors like Indonesia, Vietnam, and Philippines, which are skyrocketing ahead, and we are falling behind. A Malaysia in which we no longer need to compare ourselves with these countries, but ones where we can compare ourselves with the likes of Singapore, Hong Kong, United States, United Kingdom. A Malaysia which acts as a regional champion in ASEAN, where investors come here first before even thinking of going to Vietnam and Indonesia. We need to restore Malaysian pride. And it's not just a matter of pride, because that pride is something which we've been working in for decades. Our fathers, mothers, grandfathers, grandmothers worked for Malaysia to be where it is at today. The country which is truly multiracial, united, prosperous, and we need to ensure that the Malaysia which we leave behind is a Malaysia which is much, much better. They left a Malaysia this way. We need to leave Malaysia which is much, much better for our children and grandchildren. That's the bare minimum which any one of us should strive for, and that's the Malaysia which I want.
Thank you. Again, we all wish that, that dream and ambitions do come true for all of us. You're right. And thank you so much, YB, for your time today. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your insights and, all this interesting journey and the answers that you'll be giving for all of us Malaysians to hear and listen and watch. Thank you so much for your time. Do take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Please do send my warmest regards to Dato' Lawrence. Take care.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much.